Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
I always thought I had a pretty simple life. My name's Frank, I work in IT, I come home to my wife Linda and our 8-year-old son Ben. We'd been married 10 years. We weren't perfect, but I never thought we were broken, until I found out how wrong I'd been. It started a few weeks ago. Linda came home glowing, almost giddy, talking about this high-end girls' night her college friend Carla was throwing. Apparently Carla had done well for herself, something in fashion, and now she hosted these flashy invite-only parties. Linda made it sound like a classy networking thing, nothing I'd be interested in. In fact, she was almost too quick to say I shouldn't come. "You wouldn't know anyone," she said, brushing it off with a smile. "Carla says it's mostly women anyway. Husbands would just be bored." At the time, I didn't think much of it. Linda's always been more social than me. I'm not the jealous type. But something about the way she avoided my eyes when she brought it up. It stuck with me. The next few days, she couldn't stop talking about the party. She was texting constantly, probably Carla, I assumed, and she bought a new dress she refused to show me. "You'll see it when I wear it," she teased, waving off my questions like it was no big deal. That wasn't like her. Normally she loved getting my opinion on outfits, little things like that. And then there were the phone calls, ones she'd take in the hallway, whispering, stepping outside like a teenager hiding something. When I asked, she always said it was just work stuff. But the tone in her voice, I knew something was off. The night of the party, she looked incredible. Black dress, red lipstick, her hair done up the way she used to when we first started dating. She looked like the Linda I fell in love with, but I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. Who was she trying to impress? I offered to drive her, but she hesitated, just for a second. Then, all smiles, she said, No, Carla already arranged a car for everyone. It's taken care of." That hesitation told me everything. Linda's not the kind to turn down a ride from me, especially not to a party she claimed would be full of strangers. But I let it go, kissed her on the cheek, watched her walk out the door into that Uber, and told myself I was being paranoid. I tried to distract myself with a movie, then a game, but the silence in the house was louder than the TV. My mind wouldn't settle. Something just didn't sit right. The way she avoided my questions all week, the dress, the lipstick, the Uber, it didn't add up. Then around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from my buddy Mark. He works security at one of those high-end clubs downtown. The message was short. "Is this Linda?" Attached was a photo. I must have stared at it for 5 solid minutes. It was her, no question about it. Hair curled, dress tight, a cocktail in her hand, surrounded by people I'd never seen before. And not a girls' night in sight. The worst part? She was standing way too close to some guy, tall, well-dressed, confident. And she was laughing. Not a polite chuckle, not networking small talk. It was the kind of laugh that meant something. The kind I hadn't seen from her in months. I wanted to call her right then. I even dialed the number. But when it went straight to voicemail, my stomach dropped. That's when the anger kicked in. I wasn't going to sit there all night waiting for answers that might never come. She'd mentioned earlier in the week that the party was at Carla's place, some fancy house on the edge of town. I pulled it up on GPS, grabbed my keys, and headed out. If she wasn't going to be honest with me, I'd find the truth myself. The drive was quiet, too quiet. Every possible scenario played out in my head. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she was just networking like she said. But if that were true, why lie about where she was? Why lie about who she was with? I found Carla's house easily. Linda had mentioned how over-the-top it was, and she wasn't kidding. The place was a damn mansion, sleek, modern, glass everywhere, with a circular driveway packed with cars you'd only see in magazines. Not a single Uber in sight. I parked down the street and just sat there for a second. Was this really the crowd Linda belonged to now? People in tailored suits and dresses that probably cost more than my car. Was she embarrassed of me? Her nerdy husband in a beat-up Honda. The music was thumping as I walked up to the house. Laughter, clinking glasses, perfume in the air. This wasn't a casual get-together, this was a showcase, and Linda had lied to me about every part of it. I stepped inside, feeling like I'd just walked into a movie set. Marble floors, chandeliers, uniformed staff serving drinks, women in glittering gowns, men in custom suits. Everyone looked polished, like they belonged. I didn't. Then a woman approached me, tall, stylish, probably Carla herself. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking me up and down with polite skepticism. I'm looking for Linda Cooper, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She's my wife. She raised an eyebrow. Ah, she's upstairs. VIP lounge. Invite only. I thanked her and turned toward the stairs. She stepped in front of me. You need a wristband to go up, she said. Polite but firm, but then I heard it. Linda's laugh, floating down from the second floor. That same light, playful laugh I hadn't heard in so long, and in that moment, I didn't care about wristbands. I was going up there. I slipped past Carla while she turned to greet someone else and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. My heart was pounding, not just from nerves, but from the kind of quiet fury that creeps in when you realize the person you love might not be who you thought they were. The upstairs felt like a whole different world. The music was softer, the lighting dimmer, and everything from the furniture to the people looked more curated, more exclusive. This wasn't just another floor of the party. This was where the real connections happened. That's when I saw her. Linda. She was sitting on a low velvet couch, legs crossed, cocktail in hand, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not since before Ben was born. Not since we were young and stupid and still believed love could fix anything. Next to her was a man. He leaned in close, whispering something that made her laugh again, that same open, effortless laugh that used to be mine. I didn't recognize him at first, but then it clicked. Tony, her old college boyfriend. She'd mentioned him maybe once or twice in our entire marriage, just in passing, never with any emotion attached. But now, here he was, sitting with my wife like they'd never missed a beat. I stood in the shadows, watching for a minute that felt like an hour, trying to convince myself not to jump to conclusions. But the way she was leaning into him, the way he had his hand resting a little too casually on the back of the couch, it didn't look like old friends catching up. It looked like something more. Carla spotted me first. Her expression faltered just for a second before she walked over, her voice full of fake surprise. Frank? Wow, I didn't realize you were coming tonight. Yeah, I said, not taking my eyes off Linda. That's because I wasn't invited. Carla laughed nervously. Well, Linda's just been having such a great time. Everyone was so happy to see her again. I looked her square in the eye. Who's the guy she's with? She hesitated. Oh, that's Tony. They went to school together. Old friend. Totally harmless. Right, I said flatly. And I'm just here to enjoy the ambiance. I didn't wait for permission. I stepped past Carla and into the lounge. Linda turned and saw me, and the look on her face said it all. For just a moment, everything fell away. Her smile, her composure, her charm. What replaced it was a look I'll never forget. Panic. Frank, she said, standing up so quickly her drink nearly spilled. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I looked at Tony. He looked back at me, cool and calm, like I was the one who didn't belong. Just wanted to see how girls' night was going, I said, loud enough that the whole little group could hear. Linda flushed, and I saw her glance around at the curious stares starting to form. Can we talk somewhere private? She said, trying to keep her voice steady. No, I said, my tone turning sharp. I think we'll talk right here. I turned to Tony. You must be Tony. He nodded, didn't even bother to stand. And you must be Frank. I hated his voice instantly. Well, Tony, I said, folding my arms. Funny how you didn't come up when Linda was telling me this was a boring little get-together with some old girlfriends. Linda stepped between us, her hands raised like she was trying to keep things civil. Please, Frank, don't do this here. Don't do what? I asked. Call out the fact that you lied to me all week? That you've been sneaking off to parties with your ex? That you've been texting someone constantly and taking calls outside and shutting me out of your life like I'm a stranger in my own marriage? Nothing happened, she said quickly. Tony and he's just a friend. I looked at her, long and hard. You sure about that? Tony leaned back, watching the whole thing like it was some kind of performance. Look, man, he said finally, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Linda and I were just catching up. Really? I snapped. Then why all the secrecy? Why lie about where she was going? Why hide your name like it was something shameful? Linda looked like she wanted to disappear. Frank, can we please talk about this somewhere else? No, I said again, quieter this time. Because if we leave this room, I'll start doubting what I saw. And right now, I don't want to doubt anymore. I want the truth. And I want to hear it with everyone here so I can be sure I'm not losing my mind. She looked at Tony like he might rescue her, say something, help. But he just shrugged, like it wasn't his problem. And that silence. That silence told me everything. Linda's voice was trembling now. "Frank, please. Let's just step outside." "No," I said, my arms still folded across my chest. "I'm done stepping aside. I want answers." She looked around the room. People were doing that awkward thing where they pretend not to stare, but I could feel every pair of eyes on us. Carla had drifted back to the edge of the group, looking like she wanted to melt into the floor. Tony? He was lounging in his chair, sipping his drink, like this was just another Thursday night. "All right," Linda said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's go somewhere quiet." I nodded, and she led me down a hallway to a small sitting room. Low lighting, oversized chairs, thick carpet, probably a place for guests to have private conversations that weren't meant for the rest of the party. The second the door closed, I turned to her. "Start talking." She hesitated, then sat down slowly. "Frank, I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't plan any of this." "What didn't you plan exactly?" I asked. "The party, the lies? The part where I walk in and see you giggling on a couch with someone you swore was ancient history?" "We weren't giggling," she said, wincing even as she said it. I laughed dry, bitter. "You think that's the part I'm stuck on?" She dropped her gaze to the floor. "Tony reached out a few months ago. Just a message on social media, nothing serious. I didn't even respond at first. But then you did." She nodded. "Eventually, yeah. I don't know why. Maybe I was just curious, stupid. It started with harmless messages, then a few phone calls, then this invite to the party." "And you didn't think that was something you should tell me?" I said, voice rising. "You didn't think your partner might want to know his wife is catching up with her old boyfriend behind his back?" Her eyes welled up. "I didn't want to hurt you." "But lying didn't hurt me," I snapped. "You hid this from me, Linda. You built an entire lie around it." "It was never physical," she said quickly. "I swear to you, nothing happened between me and Tony." I let that hang in the air. "But it wasn't nothing either, was it?" She didn't answer right away, just stared at her hands like they held the script she'd been rehearsing in her head for weeks. "Were you in love with him?" I asked quietly. She looked up then, her eyes wide, her face pale. "No," she said, "but it came too fast, too polished." I took a step back, ran a hand down my face. "You hesitated before you said that." "I didn't," she said too quickly again. "You did," I said. "I know you. I've known you for 10 years. And right now, I don't believe you." She pressed her lips together hard. "It's not like that. I didn't go to that party to cheat on you." "Then why did you dress like you were going on a date?" I asked, voice suddenly calm again. "Why did you refuse to show me the dress? Why all the sneaking around? The private calls? The lies about where you were going? If you weren't doing anything wrong, why hide it?" "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I was confused. I missed feeling seen. Tony, he made me feel—" "Say it," I said. "Go on, say it." She shut her eyes tight. "He made me feel important again." There it was. The truth laid out between us like broken glass. "You think I don't see you," I said. "You think I haven't noticed the stress you're under, how tired you are. I've been doing everything I can to hold this family together, and you ran to someone who used to know you in college instead of talking to your husband." "I didn't mean to run," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to feel anything. I just wanted to see what was still there." I nodded slowly. "And?" She looked up at me then, honest, raw, wrecked. "I think I still have feelings for him." There was a ringing in my ears. For a second I thought maybe I'd misheard her, but the look on her face told me I hadn't. "You think?" I said, my voice hollow. She nodded again. "I don't know if it's real, or if it's just nostalgia, but I can't lie to you anymore." I turned and walked to the far end of the room just to put some space between us. I stared at the bookshelves, the velvet curtains, the little overpriced art pieces on the wall. I couldn't look at her just then. "Do you love him?" I asked without turning around. "I don't know," she said, voice trembling. "But you don't love me," I said. "At least not enough to stay honest." "No," she said immediately. "That's not true. I do love you, Frank." I turned to face her. "You love me. But you've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around. You've been thinking about another man. You've been making me feel like a fool in my own marriage." "I made a mistake," she said. "I see that now. I want to fix it." I shook my head slowly. "I don't think you can." Linda looked like she wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. I could see her searching for the right thing, some combination of honesty and apology that might somehow undo what she'd just said. But the damage was already done. "You say you want to fix this," I said, stepping closer now, "but how exactly do you plan to do that? What part of this can be undone?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her shoulders sank. "I don't know," she whispered. I nodded. "Exactly, because this isn't just a mistake. A mistake is leaving the stove on. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did, that's a choice, and you made it over and over again." "I didn't sleep with him," she insisted, tears now running freely down her face. "And that's supposed to make this better," I said, my voice tight. "You think the betrayal has to be physical to count?" "No," she said quietly. "I know it doesn't." I stood there, my hands clenched at my sides, trying to keep from saying something I'd regret. Because underneath the hurt, there was still love. That's what made it so hard. If I didn't care, I'd have walked out already. But part of me still wanted to believe she could somehow make this right. The other part of me knew better. Finally, I said, "We have a son. Ben. Do you remember him? Because while you were sneaking around, I was taking care of him. I was reading him bedtime stories, packing his lunch, answering his questions about why Mum was working late again." Linda covered her face with both hands, her sobs muffled now. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she choked out. "It just happened." "No," I said, "it didn't just happen. You let it happen." There was a long silence, the kind that presses in on your chest and makes the walls feel like they're moving. Eventually, I turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Home," I said. "To Ben. He needs at least one parent who's where they say they'll be." She didn't follow me, didn't try to stop me, and honestly, that hurt more than anything. As I walked back through the house, past the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, I felt like a ghost. Carla caught my eye near the stairs but didn't say anything. I didn't stop. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stood by my car for a moment, hands on the roof, trying to catch my breath. The truth was out now, no more pretending. No more half-truths. I'd asked for the truth, and I'd gotten it, and it had wrecked me. I drove around aimlessly for a while. The city felt strange at that hour, half asleep, but not entirely quiet. I passed diners, streetlights, the occasional pedestrian walking a dog. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't know what I'd even say. How do you explain something like this in a few sentences? Eventually, I ended up outside my buddy Mark's apartment. He'd always been the one person who'd call things like they were, no sugarcoating, no soft landings. I texted, "You up? Need to talk." The reply came in seconds. "Yeah, doors open." When I walked in, Mark didn't say much. He just handed me a beer and motioned toward the couch. "You look like hell," he said finally. "Thanks," I muttered. "Feels about right." He let me talk. I told him everything. From the way Linda had started pulling away, to the night she left for the party, to the photo he'd sent, to walking in and hearing her admit she still had feelings for Tony. I said it all out loud, every ugly detail. And when I was done, I felt hollow. Mark leaned back, arms folded, eyes locked on mine. "So what now?" "I don't know," I said. "I really don't." He nodded slowly. "You gonna try to work it out?" "How do you come back from that?" I asked, almost to myself. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You don't have to decide tonight, but whatever you do, make sure you're doing it for you. And for Ben. Not for the version of Linda you used to believe in." We sat there in silence for a while. The kind of silence that only old friends know how to share. Eventually I got up. "Thanks, man." "Anytime," he said. "And Frank, you didn't do anything wrong." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. Not yet. I got home just before sunrise. The house was dark and quiet, almost too quiet. I crept down the hallway like a stranger in my own home, careful not to wake Ben. His door was cracked open a little, and I peeked in. He was fast asleep, one arm draped over the stuffed dinosaur he'd carried around since he was 4. And just like that, I felt everything cave in. Because that was the part that scared me most. Not the betrayal, not even the lies. It was Ben. The way he'd look at me differently if this all fell apart. The questions he'd ask, the ones I wouldn't know how to answer. I sat on the edge of the bed, just watching him breathe. I used to believe that being a good dad meant showing up, providing, keeping the lights on. But now I realized being a good dad also meant being honest, even when it hurt. Linda was downstairs when I came into the kitchen later that morning. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her hair was pulled back, face bare, mug of coffee clutched like a lifeline. "Frank," she said softly, like she wasn't sure she still had the right to say my name. "We need to talk," I replied, sitting across from her. She nodded. But this time, I added, "I need all of it. No more vague answers, no more protecting me. If there's anything left you haven't told me, now's the time." She took a breath, then another. And to her credit, she didn't hold back. She told me how Tony had messaged her out of the blue. How at first she ignored it. Then curiosity got the better of her. How the first messages felt harmless and then became something more. How she looked forward to them. How she started hiding them. "It was never physical," she said again, eyes locked on mine. "But it felt intimate, emotional. And I know that's just as bad." I didn't disagree. She said she didn't even recognize herself anymore, that she didn't plan on seeing Tony again after the party, that it was supposed to be a one-night reconnection with the past. But she admitted she'd fantasized about what could have been. That crushed me. The idea that somewhere in her mind, our life together wasn't enough. "And what about now?" I asked. "Do you still have feelings for him?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I wish I could say no, but I honestly don't know what's real anymore." I nodded slowly. "Do you want to be with him?" "No," she said firmly this time. "Even if he wasn't part of this, I still wouldn't go back. That door's closed." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice. "I want to fix this," she continued. "I want to fix us." I stared at the table between us, the same table where we'd eaten hundreds of dinners, laughed, argued, made plans, taught Ben how to spell his name, and now it was a wall between us. "I need time," I said, her shoulders slumped with a mixture of relief and dread. "Okay. I'm not saying we're done," I clarified, "but I can't pretend everything's fine either. I don't even know what fixing this would look like." She nodded. "Take all the time you need." We spent the next few weeks in limbo. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We just coexisted. Like two people on either end of a broken bridge, both too afraid to take the first step across. We only talked about Ben, school drop-offs, dinner, schedules. She made an effort cooking my favorite meals, asking how my day was. I appreciated it, but I couldn't trust it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I started seeing a therapist, not because I wanted to save the marriage. I didn't even know if I could. I just needed to make sense of the pieces. One of the hardest truths I had to face was that love wasn't always enough. You could love someone and still break them, still betray them, still walk away. And Linda had done all three. One evening, after I'd put Ben to bed and was sitting alone in the living room, Linda came in quietly and sat across from me. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at her hands. "Frank," she finally said, "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need to ask. Do you think there's still a chance for us?" It hit me then how scared she looked. Not just guilty scared, like she was preparing for a door to shut that she wouldn't be able to open again. I looked at her, really looked at her. This was the same woman I'd built a life with, who had been there the night Ben was born, clutching my hand so tight I thought my fingers would snap. Who used to leave me little sticky notes in my laptop bag when I worked late. Who made our house feel like home. But she was also the woman who lied to me. Who chose secrecy over trust. Who let another man, someone from her past, into a part of her heart that should have been mine. And the truth was, I didn't know her anymore. "I've thought about that a lot," I said, "and I keep going in circles. One day I think we can work through it. The next, I can't even look at you without remembering how I found out." She nodded, eyes glistening but no tears falling yet. "I don't hate you," I added, "but I don't trust you either, and I don't know if I ever will again." That was the hardest thing to admit. Her voice cracked. "I know I broke something in you. I know I broke us. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. I'll do it." "I believe you mean that," I said, "but that's not the question anymore." She looked confused. "Then what is?" "It's whether I want to try," I said, "and I'm not sure I do." The room went quiet. Not heavy or hostile, just quiet in the way something sacred gets quiet before it breaks. Eventually, I stood up. I think it's best if we separate, at least for now. Linda let out a slow breath, the kind that holds in weeks of emotion. Okay, she said, barely audible. We'll figure out a plan for Ben, I continued. What co-parenting looks like, who lives where. But I can't live in this house pretending we're okay. It's not fair to either of us. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics. Linda found a small apartment nearby. I helped move some of her things in, for Ben's sake more than anything. We kept things civil, polite, detached. The day she left, she knelt in front of Ben and hugged him so tight I thought she might never let go. He didn't fully understand what was happening, just that Mommy was going to have a different house and that he'd see her a lot. I stood by the door, watching it all unfold with this awful blend of numbness and grief. Like I was watching the end of a life I'd built brick by brick. After she left, the house felt bigger than I remembered. Not in a good way, just empty. Ben asked questions, of course. Kids always do. But I answered them gently, honestly, without bitterness. Mommy and Daddy still love you very much, I told him. We're just figuring things out. That became my line for everything, figuring things out. I started to rebuild, slowly, quietly. I got back into running. I picked up my guitar again. I stopped eating dinner on the couch and made a habit of sitting at the table, even if it was just me and Ben. I leaned on Mark, on therapy, on time. And slowly, the anger dulled into something I could live with. One afternoon, a few months after Linda had moved out, I dropped Ben off at her place. She stepped outside to greet us, looking tired but calm. Frank, she said as I buckled Ben's bag into the car. Can I say something? I nodded. I want you to know how sorry I am. For everything. For what I did. For what I broke. I know I can't fix it. But I'll regret it for the rest of my life. There was nothing else to say, really. I just nodded again. I hope you find peace, Linda. For your sake, and for Ben's. Driving away, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfied. But I did feel lighter. Time passed, seasons changed. The house no longer felt like a tomb. It began to feel like mine again. Not because I filled it with new things, but because I stopped filling it with silence. Ben adjusted better than I expected. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. As long as he knew he was loved, as long as he saw both of us trying, he was okay. And in some ways, parenting became even more intentional. Every moment with him felt more grounded, more precious. I was no longer going through the motions, I was showing up. I saw Linda often, of course. We exchanged polite updates during handoffs. School notes, snacks, who had him for the weekend. She stayed respectful of my space, never pushed, never hinted. She knew this was something I had to process on my own, and I did. Through therapy, through long conversations with Mark, through quiet mornings on the porch with coffee and no one to answer to, I began to see how much I had let myself shrink inside the marriage. Not because of Linda, but because I stopped listening to my own needs. I stopped speaking up when I felt lonely. I stopped showing her the version of me that still wanted passion, still needed to be seen. It didn't excuse what she did. Nothing ever would. But it helped me understand how we drifted so far apart that someone like Tony could walk right into the space between us. About 6 months after the separation, I met someone. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand romantic comedy moment. It was just a conversation that felt easy, with someone who saw me, not as a broken man trying to piece his life back together, but as someone whole enough to start again. Her name was Rachel, not Carla's Rachel, a different one. She was kind, grounded, had a quiet strength about her. We started as friends. No pressure, no agenda, and slowly something real began to take shape. I didn't rush it. I didn't want to repeat old mistakes. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Hopeful that maybe I hadn't lost everything. That maybe the end of one life wasn't the end of me. One night after dinner, I was tucking Ben into bed when he looked at me and asked, "Are you happy, Dad?" That question hit me in the chest. I smiled, brushed his hair back and said, "Yeah, buddy, I think I'm getting there." Looking back, I don't think Linda ever set out to hurt me. I think she got lost, and I think I did too. We stopped seeing each other, we stopped hearing each other, and once that distance formed, it was only a matter of time before someone else filled the space. I'll never forget the night I found out. I'll never forget the look on her face when she realized I knew. But what I remember more than anything now is how strong I had to be afterward. How painful it was to make choices that protected my son's sense of stability. How hard it was to walk away not just from a person, but from a future I thought was mine. But I did, and I'm better for it. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the very thing that shows you who you really are.